Hey everyone, Kirk Warner here from the Run Experience. I'm here to share with you guys a little series that a friend and physical therapist, Charlie Merrill, and I put together on plantar fasciitis. This is going to be a three-part series. Part one being kind of the background and assessment of plantar fasciitis and how to kind of figure out where the issue might be stemming from. Then we're going to do some mobility exercises, and then we're going to do some strength and stability exercises to help kind of get plantar fasciitis gone and you guys back to running. So you begin this series with a little background on what plantar fasciitis is, where it typically stems from, and then also some kind of things to consider in terms of what your past history is as a runner, or maybe just in general with old injuries and whatnot. So here's a little background.
So you guys, heel pain or plantar fasciitis is such a common problem in runners. It manifests in so many different ways that it often becomes difficult to figure out how to treat it. Sometimes it's a problem in the foot and the ankle, but other times it's actually a problem in the low back and hip, and that makes it very difficult to know where to start. So we're going to take some time to talk about how you can figure out where your plantar fasciitis is coming from, how you can assess that, and then we're going to give you some simple solutions to help to address those problems once you figure that out.
And this next piece is all about assessment of risks. So we talked about kind of the major factors involved in plantar fasciitis, and now we're going to see if any of those major factors, whether it's low back, it's hip, it's calf, it's ankle, etc., are something that's more relevant to you than other things. So we go through some assessments on how to figure out if you do have any sort of mobility or strength limitations with any of those.
Hey, so we're starting here on the hip, and the hip is an interesting part of the problem when it comes to plantar fasciitis because it's a bit of a silent killer. Most people don't even know that they're stiff in the front of their hip. And what happens when you don't have enough length in these tissues, you can't fully toe off of that leg. And so your calf ends up working harder to get propulsion because you're not able to get as long a stride before you go to propel into the next step. So the tissue in the front of the hip is extremely important, and this is how you're going to test to see if you need to mobilize this area. This is called the Thomas test. You're going to find a surface that's high enough off the ground, like God forbid, your dining room table, maybe your bed. You could use the top of the staircase. It has to be high enough that your leg that you're testing, doesn't touch the ground. First thing you're going to do is bring your knee up toward your chest, and you're going to lie back so that this leg can hang free. You want to bring this leg up to the point where your low back just to press into the table or the floor, but not so much that you're lifting your tailbone up off the table. Once you find that position, you're going to see where this leg hangs. Now, there are three tissues that get people into trouble when it comes to plantar fasciitis. One is the anterior hip. It's the joint capsule. And if you find that your thigh isn't parallel to the ground, your anterior hip joint capsule can be implicated in why your hip is stiff. If you find that your thigh is parallel to the ground but your knee is extended and you can't bend it it's not bending 70 to 90 degrees when it's relaxed, you know your long quad, your rectus femoris, is implicated in your tightness. If you find that your leg is springing out to the outside and it's not in line with your body like it is when you're running, then you know your TFL muscle, high in your hip, and your IT band are short and they're springing you to the outside. If you have all three of these things, call it the trifecta, then you're screwed. And you know this is probably a really important reason why you're having foot pain, and it's affecting your biomechanics massively. So the goal is to get your leg back into this position at rest, and that's how you know that you need to work on it if you can't do that, and that's also how you know if you've met your goal and you can move on to other things. So we talked in the intro about some of these remote areas that are involved in causing foot pain of all kinds, and specifically heel pain or plantar fascia pain. The lumbar spine, the low back, can be implicated in foot pain very, very often, and that also involves the hips into the glutes. And so when you're the type of person that has a lot of density, a lot of thickness in your lumbar tissues, and a lot of trigger points in your glutes, the sciatic nerve, as it passes from your back through your glutes down towards your heel and eventually actually terminates in your heel as the medial calcaneal nerve can become compressed. And so this is a really important area to mobilize if you're the type of person that has had a history of low back pain, or you know you have frequent problems with your low back, or you know you have really dense tissue in this part of your body. So this is how you test to see whether these tissues are important tissues to mobilize. Just a quick story so I can show you the tissues that we're talking about. The low back, the soft of the low back, just above your pelvis and just below your ribs is where we're going to be targeting on both sides. We're also going to be targeting your glutes, but not so much your upper glute here, though you may find some good trigger points here. We're going to be looking in your lower glute. This is down by your sits bone, and this is an area that I treat a lot in plantar fasciitis. In fact, when I stick needles in this muscle, very often people feel pain in their heel when the needle goes into the muscle. It's a very unique muscle, and we're going to talk about how to activate that muscle later if it's shut down, if it's weak, if it's not working well. But this is how you know whether you need to mobilize it first. So there are tons of tools you can use to assess your low back and your hip and the soft tissue in that part of your body. Lacrosse ball is probably the most straightforward and the most available, but a ball the size of a softball is actually a very heavy hard metal shot put for you advanced mobilizers. Can be handy, especially for the glutes. It's a little less sharp, a little less intense if it's a bigger size. And then the rad helix is a very unique shape. It's a nice density to be able to mobilize the lumbar spine and do both sides at the same time and tenderize that tissue. But we'll stay focused on the lacrosse ball today because it's the most common. To assess how your soft tissue is feeling in your low back, you're going to put the ball right in that soft part just above your pelvis bone and just below your ribs. And you're going to sort of search around in there to see what the tissue feels like. If you find that there's a ton of tenderness and there are hard knots and it feels very dense, then that's a sign that you probably need to spend some time mobilizing this area. Especially if you compare it to the other side and you find that the side of your foot pain correlates with the more tender, more dense side of your lumbar spine, then you're going to want to take some time to mobilize that soft tissue. The other area you're going to check is your glutes, and your glutes are massive muscles. You have glute medius up high, you have your piriformis a little lower, and then you have your smaller hip rotators even a little lower than that. So as you get on there, start exploring, you might find trigger points through all those tissues, and they're all important to mobilize. But as I said before, this one muscle down low is one of the most common referral trigger points to the heel. And so you have to be gentle with this muscle because it affects the sciatic nerve so much. But if you get down low and you find it's knotty and it's tender and it's provoking symptoms locally and or down into your foot, then you know this is a muscle that you need to mobilize. It doesn't take much pressure to figure out if it's tender or not, and between mobilizing it and or activating the muscle to get it back online again, you may need to do both. You're going to get a sense pretty quickly whether this is a muscle that's relevant for you mobility-wise. So we've dealt with some of the remote issues that cause plantar fasciitis, the low back, the hip. Those mobility issues can be silent killers. Now we're going to move down to the ankle and the calf, and it's important to know that your ankle joint, if it's stiff, can cause heel pain, but your calf muscle is equally likely to cause heel pain if it's short. So I'm going to show you how to assess both. You're going to lose me here as we pan down and I talk about the stick test. First thing you're going to do is find a stick, or you can use a wall that's about a hand's width away from your foot. We're looking to see if you can keep your heel down and get your knee to the stick, but it's not quite that simple because I want to check this with your foot supinated, with your arch high. I want to make sure your foot points straight to the wall and not turned out and pronated. So I want it here. And then I want you to aim your knee over the little toe side of your foot to see if you can move in that direction. So I'm not going here and saying, wow, look how flexible I am. I'm actually going out here to check my ankle the way it's supposed to hinge when I'm running or squatting or moving in a healthy position. Now, if I can get my knee to the wall, my ankle joint is moving fine. If I can't, then I might need to mobilize that joint. The alternative test for the calf muscle is very similar, But this time you're going to put the stick right at the tip of your toes. You're going to have your foot in that exact same position, supinated, rolled sort of to the outside. Your foot points straight ahead. And you're going to lean forward with your knee totally straight. You may feel this in your upper calf muscle on the inner or outer side. But what you want to see is that you have enough flexibility in your calf with your foot in that very specific position that your knee can move well past the stick. If you're back here and you feel a stretch in your calf and your knee's not quite to the stick or just meeting the stick, you're stiff in your calves, maybe as well as your ankle joint. And you need to work on improving the flexibility of the calf muscle, at least, if not in addition to the ankle joint itself.
Thanks for checking out this video on plantar fasciitis. We have a ton of more stuff on our channel for injury prevention and whatnot, so be sure to subscribe to our channel if you want to get access to some more of that cool stuff and updates as they pop out. We're putting out 3 videos a week. It's crazy. Anyways, if you had any questions or comments for either me or Charlie, be sure to drop a question down in the comments so we can get back to you guys as quickly as we can. And of course, if you like this video, let us know by hitting the like button below. That'll help us get the good word out about plantar fasciitis and fixing it. Thanks again for watching this video, guys. We'll see you in the next one.